evening and welcome to Season 2, Episode 4 of Candid Conversations. A very, very happy Teachers' Day to the three of my panelists, to the many, many more teachers who are attending here, the students, and everyone else who would be eventually listening and seeing this wherever you are. I want to thank Alenka, Aspi, and Sirish for agreeing to do this today on Teachers' Day. Thank you very much, all three of you. Okay, I want to introduce my panelists, and I'll start with Alenka. Alenka Rebello, she's a senior faculty with Don Bosco College of Hospitality Studies, Kurla, Mumbai. She's a master's in food science and technology. She's a certified trainer from the Trinity College, London. Her first job was as a lecturer, and she moved as a research assistant for an NGO teaching street children and children with learning disabilities. She was a cabin crew for an international airline for some time, but teaching was her calling, and she realized that to learn, to be among, to inspire, and motivate young adults was far more fulfilling for her than a corporate job. She's with Don Bosco College now since 2009, and this is her 11th year, and she's amongst the first staff to have started the college. She lectures in 6 different subjects. She's probably one of the only ones that I know who has the honor and the pleasure to do a different subject each semester. She not only teaches, but she encourages extracurricular activities, such as the college band choir and many more. Being with adolescents fuels one's spark for zest and challenges her out of her comfort zone. Welcome, Alenka. Our next panelist is Aspi Daruwala, senior faculty at Haft Sophia Polytechnic. He started his career in 1989 with the Taj Mahal Hotel as a graduate trainee in hotel operations. Highly dedicated and customer-oriented that he is, he was selected to be one of the first specialists in the group to handle guests' special requests. He felt that the commerce degree restricted his growth avenues, so he did a diploma in Haft from Sophia Polytechnic. He now has a master's in tourism management as well. An educator at heart, he joined Haft as faculty. He excels in front office operations, rooms division management. He's also a placement officer for his college, where he liaises with the industry and assists the HOD in the administrative work. Aspi's mantra is that a glass is neither full nor empty. The reality dictates that one has to start with an empty glass, and it is up to the individual to fill the glass at halfway mark or let go, or to take that extra effort to reach the pinnacle or the brim. Aspi is a sports enthusiast. He loves table tennis, carom, of course, and swimming. Thank you, Aspi, for being here today. Last but not the least, Sirish Bokde, professor and vice principal with the Apije Institute of Hospitality, with various degrees under his belt. He's a PhD scholar in human resource management. He's done his master's in human resource development. He has a master's in tourism management. And of course, he's an alumni of the Dadar Catering College. Besides these, he also has a few professional development program degrees under his belt in hotel revenue and strategic hospitality management from Cornell University. With over 3 decades in the hospitality industry, 24 of them have been in academics and 6 in the industry. He's one of the pioneers who is continuing to contribute towards curriculum development, and he's also on the inspection committee of new colleges. Sirish is a progressive technology enthusiast. He represents academia in many a tech fora, which helps him understand the dynamic technological environment and how he can bring that into hospitality academics. Sirish loves photography, traveling, gadgets. Sorry, gadgets is the first one, and in bold it should be. And he's a connoisseur of good food. He also loves street food. And a few weeks back, he put up a picture on social media where he was having some pav bhaji. And I was so happy to see that. I showed it to my wife, and my wife said, "Go to sleep. I'm not making pav bhaji for you at night." Sirish, that pav bhaji is pending, and I'm going to take that from you when we meet in person soon. Thank you and welcome. I'm also taking this opportunity for the listeners to quickly take a note of my next 3 sessions. Tuesday, 8th September, I'm doing a session on sustainability. Take a snapshot if you're interested. The link is there. Registrations are open. I'm going to be speaking with Charmaine on health and nutrition. Giridhar Rao, who will talk about agricultural commodities, and Chef Michael Swami, who is going to speak on culinary with nature. This is on coming Tuesday. Thursday, 10th September, is my first part on culinary craft, where I'm going to talk to 3 very progressive and very passionate chefs. Chef Bobby Kapoor from Dubai, Irfan Pabani from Bombay, and Bernard Colasso with 1 leg in Bombay and 1 in Bangkok. Sorry, 1 leg in Goa and 1 leg in Bangkok. Join me on 10th September to speak about their passion, the performance, and the pain that they go through in Culinary Craft Part 1. And next Saturday, I'm doing one on international travel, trade, and business with Tanas, Jiten, and Prasanna. You can have all these details on my social media. And for those of you who are interested to watch the previous episodes, they are all on the YouTube channel by my name. You can always go there and check them out. With this, I'm going to request my panelists to come and put their video and audio on, and we'll start this conversation. Thank you very much. Hello, good evening. Happy Teachers' Day formally to the 3 of you. Welcome to Candid Conversations.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Great. So some opening statements from each of you, so the audience can see you one by one before I start with the spice part of my conversations. Alenka, let's start with you. Aspi and then Sirish. Can't hear you, Alenka. I can't hear you. Do you want to plug your thing back inside and see? Just try that out. Sirish, can you hear her?
No.
Okay, so let us fix that. And
I can't hear her too.
Aspi, you can start with your hello, and we'll try till the time Alenka fixes that.
Mr. Satyan, thank you very much for having me over here as a part of this panel amongst Mr. Sirish and Ma'am Alenka. Sirish I've known from the past 2.5 decades almost, and is a very dear friend and colleague and a tremendous resource person. So once again, I'm indeed privileged to being here with you and my team members and going ahead with this session.
Thanks, Aspi. Welcome. Sirish?
Thank you.
Very good evening to all present here. It's wonderful to see so many familiar names who have joined this session. And also a very happy Teachers' Day to all the teachers present here. I hope this conversation will add a lot of value to how students probably will look at online platforms and education as such, and probably change, the entire dynamics of the learning environment. So thank you so much for having me, and looking forward to a great conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Sirish. Alenka, are you here? Okay, we seem to have lost Alenka. Okay, yeah, you're back. We can't hear you still. Okay, you want to do one thing, Alenka, you want to try logging off and logging on again? We'll continue.
I was about to say that.
Just try that,
always
it might
works.
help you. Yeah, just try that, it'll work. Okay, so till we get her back, let's start a very simple thing. The COVID has really affected us, and last month in season 1, I had three of the principals of your catering colleges also on this candid conversation discussions, but we spoke about rebuilding trust in hospitality education. Today we're essentially going to touch upon the challenges in hospitality education, challenges of you all as staff members, challenges of students, and probably, and a little more than probably, on the relevance of today's curriculum in today's times. All right. So let's start with you, Sirish. And then we'll move to the others as well. How has online learning been? Okay, great, great. Helenka?
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah. Am I
very
audible? Okay. Thank you.
yes.
Yes. Sorry. Yes. Go ahead. Go ahead. Please continue. Continue. I'll come in. I'll come in.
Your opening statements.
Yes,
your opening
yes.
statement. Start.
Yes.
Okay. So once again, thank you, Satyan, for this opportunity to be part of this lovely webinar, and also privileged to be sharing the panel with Mr. Aspi and Mr. Shirish. So happy Teachers' Day to all of you and to everyone out there listening. Looking forward to a wonderful evening together, and yes, candid as it can get. So let's move on.
Thank you, Helenka. So Sirish, let's start with you, and then both of the other panelists can come in very quickly. How have you and your students adapted to this whole new conundrum of online education?
Very interesting question to kickstart the conversation. It all started probably in the month of March, and suddenly everything closed down. I think we all went through that phase. And then, there was a component of the syllabus which was to be completed. Certain revisions had to be done. So now that the students are not coming to the college, how do we reach out to them? Prior to that, we were always, into doing some kind of online sessions using Skype platform with guest speakers. So we had a small, jugaad system in our institute, because I remember about 7 years ago, we thought of building a video conferencing, having a video conference set up in one of the classrooms. And when I went out to look at the prices, what kind of capital expenses would be incurred, it was probably going to more than 10 lakhs. So we shelved it. Okay, then nothing happened for the last 7 years. And then suddenly this pandemic came in, and before that, the Skype experience. And then I suddenly decided, I think we should get on to Skype, and I shared the, we started off, but then students, came out with, so why are you using Skype? Please use Zoom. Zoom is a better platform. There, we learn from students again. So immediately, I had heard about Zoom, but never probably explored the software. So because anything new, probably it's very strange to all of us, anything new. And we are quite resistant, because we are in our comfort zone, and suddenly moving on to a new platform was something which I didn't really want to. I was happier with Skype. And then when I went on to Zoom and then started exploring the benefits and the features, I said, this is it, and then followed by, and then I think all of us in our institute started taking online classes, and then we really knew how to use it. And we could complete the entire portion, properly, where we could share the slides and have conversations and have a nice interaction. But even after that, okay. So this was something which I, we started off, yeah.
Great. So, that's nice to hear. And I know you personally, you are a techie. You go by the name Techie Sirish, hashtag Techie Sirish. So for you, it must be a breeze. But I'm more curious to know, how did your students react to online classes? Sirish, we'll start with you, and then we'll move down to Helenka.
In fact, it was very smooth. I really didn't face challenges in terms of they getting corrected. In fact, what was the challenge was the connectivity, because all these students, they went to their villages where internet connectivity is always a challenge, but some places they are blessed to have good internet connectivity. So they log in from their phones, some using their laptops, some have Wi-Fi at home. So it's a mix basically, which comes in. So I actually saw the varied experiences, people had. Then they don't share their video because of, and then they give excuses that why they're not sharing, the video part. And so it still continues. After it's been about 5 or 6 months, the same excuses continue. And
but the adapting of the students to your online thing was,
now they are enjoying it.
were they
In
open?
fact, yes, absolutely open. They are enjoying. We can actually make out from the conversation, from the attendance. Because we take attendance also, and they stay on. Right from the beginning to the end. Attendance has got something to do with it because obviously if they don't meet the requirements, then probably they won't be allowed. So
Great.
But then otherwise also I think they find I can actually make out they find they get everything very clearly, and it allows us as teachers to do lot many more things probably which wouldn't have been possible in a classroom setup. So that is some advantages of online
sure.
platforms.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Helenka, same thoughts or different thoughts from your side?
Pretty much the same, in fact, as what Mr. Shirish said. I absolutely agree with very much, in fact, the same. The initial teething problems were absolutely there, and it was not a very smooth transition, if I can be honest about that, because for a lot of us teachers, I mean, especially someone like me, I'm pretty much old school, so I need my classroom. I need the atmosphere and the ambience of being with my students, and getting in the thrill of taking a class face to face. And so obviously it was not easy to move to a desk and a laptop and a little screen and then try and reach out to all my 60 students, and sometimes even 120 students. So it's all been trial and error, sorry. So it's just been all trial and error. And most importantly, I belong to the previous generation, if I may say so. So I am not a techie from any angle whatsoever. I mean, my colleagues, my friends will absolutely vouch for it. I mean, you get me to even type an Excel sheet and be like, okay, do I really have to do it, or can somebody out there help me with it? So I have my wonderful colleagues in Don Bosco College and who are ever ready to help me with that. So the very fact of trying a Zoom meeting, and now we have something on a Google Meet, and then we have some Telegraph, and then now all sorts of things we tried out, and then of course we zeroed in on Microsoft Teams, and that seems to work beautifully for us. So yes, there were a lot of initial issues, and but we have a fantastic team who kind of got all the students on board and logged them in. So getting the students online and getting them set to this whole new normal is absolutely like a whole different ballgame. Yeah, it's not been easy at all. Definitely not.
Thank you, Helenka. Thank you so much. Aspi, your thoughts?
Yes, Mr. Satyan. Yes, I was very apprehensive initially, obviously, because there are a lot of external factors over which we don't have control of, especially when we are taking an online class, the internet connectivity being the most important. And basically, my apprehension also was that how will I keep my students' attention focused throughout the 45 minutes or throughout the 1 hour, where I will have to ensure that I will have to increase the quality and the subject matter of my PPTs to that extent, making a combination of visuals and text just to ensure that they stay focused and to ensure that the session doesn't become boring. So yes, initially in the month of perhaps June, I was extremely apprehensive when there was all this talk going on as to how we are going to migrate from this actual physical teaching classroom atmosphere to a virtual interactive teaching learning atmosphere. And then I'd like to especially mention that a very dear friend of mine once just insisted that, okay, this evening I am going to organize a demo for you, a live video conference on Google. You better make sure that you are there. And he took me through step by step. And he also taught me the tricks of the trade as how to open a parallel connection on my cell phone. So I know that whatever slide I'm transmitting, if I can see it on my cell phone, obviously it's gone to the student. So I don't want to mention his name. I'm sure he's logged in, but thank you very much. And that is what gave me the initial confidence. I've also been through several workshops as far as this is concerned, but the basic knowledge and the confidence that I got through that 1 half an hour session, believe me, it is what I am today. I am quite confident in sharing my screen, in presenting, and well, it's definitely we as teachers have evolved from the classroom environment, and we have managed to develop this totally parallel skill set of e-learning, online teaching learning, and definitely this will benefit us tremendously. I mean, whether it's post-COVID, anytime we have this parallel skill set, and it will add tremendous value to our teaching skills and our resume. As far as the students are concerned, yes, they have also had to evolve, and to a certain extent, they are appreciating the efforts that we are taking to ensure that the pause button which was activated on their education has been released thanks to this interactive online platform, because we don't have a choice at the moment.
Great. Thank you. Thank you all for your honesty and candidness, if I may plug that word in again. Really appreciate. And I just want to share here with you that change brings in fear to all of us. Us as in human beings and teachers, educators, and more so even as students. It is great to hear what Sirish said and what all three of you or two of you others added as well, that you are very empathetic towards the students and their problems. A lot of them, most of them, I would say, without sounding making a mockery, may not have backgrounds where they want to display their videos on. And I think initial stages, and even now, a lot of them are not too keen on doing that, but they're very keen to learn and study. So that's great, and keep doing that good job. And yeah, I think online is definitely going to continue even after your college is open and we get back to this. I think it's going to be the future. It already is. Having said that, I can't resist myself from asking you as teachers, how difficult was it for you people to move? Elenka said that the drive is to have 60 eyeballs or 100 eyeballs and presence in front of you. How difficult was it for each of you, one, to adapt your portion to an online level, and two, even not have control over students physically? How difficult was that, and how did you guys manage that part? Elenka, you want to start?
Yeah, yeah. Like I said, initially I felt very robotic and very mechanical because my ability to be a better teacher. It kind of I get my feedback, I get my motivation from the way my students react in my class, right? I mean, I may have a lesson plan. I do have a lesson plan. I know what I'm supposed to teach in terms of a syllabus, in terms of a 1-hour class. But the fact of the matter is, I can absolutely confidently say there will never be 2 classes of mine which are the same. I mean, I am teaching, like you announced, I'm teaching 6 subjects, and in all the 3 years. But in all these years, even if I'm teaching, let's say I'm teaching a nutrition subject, even if it's the same topic, I will never be able to simulate the same lecture in 2 different classes, simply because that's the evolution of ideas, and I get that when I'm with my students. So that was primarily very difficult for me to adapt to. And your other question was about how do I get it done right now online. So I don't put on my video, to be honest. I don't put on my face on that screen, because truth be told, I am distracted by my own face. So I don't put on my face. I have my presentation on. And as much as I would love to see the faces of my students, it's not possible because of the app and because of the presentation. But what I do often and repeatedly in the course of 1 hour is that I randomly call out the names of the students on my list, right? So that ensures a very collaborative learning and encourages the participation of my class. Because one of the challenges that I have faced initially in the first, we have started online teaching in Don Bosco's since June now, right? And we are absolutely full-fledged teaching online every day, all our faculty. So what I noticed, and all of us noticed initially, is the concept of the passive students. In class, anyways, they were passive. And it's kind of a boon now for them, because they are all the more passive, and like, who cares, she can't see me, and probably I just log in and then I'll drift away. I'll probably go back to sleep and I'm logged in. So how do I keep a check? How do I monitor that? So one way of me monitoring that is that I randomly call out names of students and I make them answer. I ask them a question, I ask them for feedback. And that seems to be working for me as of now, because they do not know, yeah, what's happening, and maybe she'll take my name. So that's what I do.
Aspi, some thoughts from you?
Sir, as far as the challenge that I am facing, basically, I have to, in fact, change the mindset of the student, and basically the bigger picture of education, where the student was coming to college and enjoying the classroom environment and chatting with his friends and probably going to the canteen and having a cup of tea. And that is the actual process of education, the development of the mind. And it's a combination of academics and this ambience. So having said that, to enable him to just sit in front of the PC and assimilate information purely over a digital platform, it is a challenge. And once again, I come back to my point. From my side, I have to ensure that the quality of the subject matter which I put forward to them has to be interesting. Otherwise, they can get distracted very, very easily. And as ma'am very rightly says, that we don't have any physical control over their activity at the other end. So we have to assume that they are paying attention. And obviously, during this time when all of us are hassled, we have to incorporate in them that make use of this time, which is your most valuable resource. To a certain extent, because of a course which is a combination of theory and practicals, to a certain extent, we are restricted as far as practicals are concerned. But yes, we can go ahead with the theory, and they have to make use of the time and gain mastery of the theory, because when we start college again, obviously we will be concentrating on practicals. So by far we have managed to basically establish this sort of a mutual respect, and whenever I speak, they listen. Although it's termed as a webinar, it's more a webcast where it is a one-to-many, because a webinar would end up in a percussion, not a discussion.
Thank you, Aspi. That was very innovatively and musically said. Sirish, your thoughts on this quickly before I move to a very important question that I want to stay with you on, because you will be the right person to start the conversation. So your quick thoughts on this point.
In fact, I actually started using Zoom very effectively when I started off exploring the various features, because I'm quite always curious when something new comes in. I try to find out everything, what that software can do. Going through manuals and some videos, and then I realized, and I saw somebody else also using it, the breakout rooms feature. So I said, why not use that breakout rooms feature to do group discussions, because we have something called as group discussions in front office practical semester 5. So then I explored that, so if you have a class of 50, so we have a system of breaking it into 5 different rooms of 10 each. Give them topics in advance so that they come prepared. And then they start off with the discussion. So then everything gets recorded and we play that to them. And then probably we give them some feedback about how they should do basically. So the practical is conducted. So, probably it is possible for certain things, not everything. Okay, like for example, I was looking at my colleagues, who handle culinary. Now, culinary doing practicals, has to be in the institute. I mean, they have to actually come to the institute hands-on, with their skills. How do we do that online? Very, very difficult, Some colleges, I know that they made kits, kits of various ingredients, dry ingredients, and then they couriered it, and then having a demo class, and then they are probably replicating the same at their own residences. But then you don't have all the equipments, you don't expect them to have. So these challenges are there. So what we have done is, and I think there are instructions from the university as well, online demonstrations, so we on Zoom itself, so we get them closer to the textures. If there's a baking class, if there's some bread making happening or hot kitchen, so we're trying to do that, but we're just waiting for the students to come back to the institute, and then I think a lot of practicals will happen. Till such time, I think we are doing practicals in terms of demonstrations. I'm sure all the colleges have also figured out what can be done. And I think it's important to explore all the facilities, what features of the software, and get yourself trained, and then features like even Google Forms, the quiz mode, you can evaluate them after every lecture, so it's easy. So they know how much of knowledge they have, absorbed after every lecture. So that can be continuous assessment.
Sure.
So some mechanic, because we still are not sure we are still experimenting. We really don't know what the mantra is. And I'm sure after a year of online experience, we'll know what exactly works and what doesn't work.
Great.
Over to you.
No, well said, Sirish. And I know for a fact that at least in your colleges, you guys are doing a tremendously great job with webinars in educating your students, both your Don Bosco, Sophia's, as well as APJ. And I try and catch up with some of the interesting stuff because you keep it open for people to join. But it's great stuff. I enjoy the dedication and the planning that goes at times like this. And I just personally feel and hope that I wish students would take advantage of that.
Sorry, I'd just like to add one more point. Now you spoke about webinars. We've been doing these webinars, from I think May onwards. I think you also attended one of the webinars, and then you must have noticed that we as faculties were actually managing it. And then it was a task, for us to do it. Oh God, again, this one more webinar. So nobody was happy doing it. So we thought, why not give this opportunity to the students, So we kind of about 3 webinars, we've done 3 webinars with students now. So it is really going on well, and students are actually getting groomed, on handling the online platform. So we just kind of watch from a distance, and we just watch the fun. They do everything, and their entire experience is something which adds, a lot of skills to them, confidence, public speaking on an online platform. So this is something we have experimented with, and it really works. It's really working. And they're looking forward to more webinars. They keep asking, so where is the next webinar? I want to be a part of the organizing committee.
I agree. And I think that's exactly what a teacher and a coach's job is to do, is to keep inspiring. So good job, all you guys. I'm going to move to a little difficult part. Okay. And I know it's going to be slightly uncomfortable, but I would really appreciate your honesty for all 3 of you. And if you feel uncomfortable, you can step out and say, okay, I'll skip this one. Okay, before that, a lot of you in the audience, good evening. If you've come in late, sorry, this is a restricted session where you can put your questions on the Q&A, and we will take it up towards the end. All of you raising your hands, it means that you're waving to me and the panelists. We are waving you back. So keep doing that. But if you have any thoughts and questions, please pop them in. Hello again, Jay and everyone. But you can, thank you, Mr. Sani. You can pop your questions in the Q&A, and I will take them up at an appropriate time. Thank you. Okay, coming back. So I want to touch upon, college infrastructure. Now, this is not for any of your particular colleges, okay? Just in general, we are a very old school kind of college setup across India, not necessarily in hotel schools, but everywhere. The infrastructure today in hospitality schools across the world is very, very different. It's ahead of times, moving with times. What do you think? Is this the right time for you and your colleges to think about upgrading the infrastructure of classrooms, of practical sessions? I don't mean to say in any way that your classrooms or your infrastructure is bad, but definitely, as compared to what is coming up in the future or what the industry really has, could something be done about it? Are you guys doing something about it? Anyone can start to, and I'd love to hear your answers on this. Aspi, you want to start with you first?
Yes, Mr. Satya. In fact, I would, as far as upgrading the infrastructure is concerned, our college to a certain extent has been in sync with the industry as far as the infrastructure, especially the basic infrastructure. Let me give you an example. As teachers, all of us use computers and LCD projectors. Our food production laboratories have got very good ovens. They have got self-contained ranges, and we are getting there, Mr. Satyan. But being an educational institution, we definitely have financial restrictions. And yes, I can very proudly state that thanks to my proactive management, rather the management committee of my college, the management of my college is extremely proactive, and uh, infrastructure improvement is basically happening uh, at regular intervals, and a certain amount of money is kept aside for infrastructure improvement, because we have periodic meetings and we put across our requests. And yes, certain requests are sanctioned practically immediately, but then certain requests which involve capital expenditure take some time, but yes, they do happen. And I can very proudly state, I mean, I've been a part of this institution for 26 years, and I'm happy and proud to state that we have an extremely proactive management who is with us all the way. And we are very much in sync with the industry.
Thank you. Thanks, Aspi. Elenka, your thoughts on this?
Yeah, absolutely. I absolutely have to reiterate the same thing that Mr. Aspi just said about our college and our management as well. We have, I mean, we are in terms of hotel management and hospitality, I think we are fledgling in the industry. We just started in 2009, but we have kind of grown and soared in leaps and bounds in the last decade and more. And it's been an amazing journey in terms of infrastructure, in terms of technology. Um, like you announced earlier, I was a part of the beginners, you know, as in the first one of the first join, and we started with a group of 12 students, and we operated out of one room, one floor. And initially it was just the HOD, Miss Annabelle ma'am and Susan ma'am, myself and a few others. And from that one floor and one room, which kind of doubled up for so many things, we moved on to two whole stories. We have two whole floors rather, state of the art in terms of having our own e-library and having our research unit. And yes, with online happening now, as you stated, it's amazing to see our faculty who have been tirelessly working. We have our own IT department in Don Bosco College. We have an entire IT department that kind of overlooks all the IT requirements for the entire, all the disciplines, all the departments. But we have our own IT department now, and they are actually our faculty from our chefs and you know, our RDM team. They are all joined together, F&B. So we have so many of them working together and putting forth our webinars are like twice a week. I mean, Thursdays and Saturdays we have webinars, and we have expert panelists coming in, and we have the faculty hosting the webinar. We have ex-students coming in. So that itself says a lot for the upgrade in technology. And even in college, irrespective, even before COVID could actually hit us all, even in college, we absolutely use technology to our advantage in terms of our AV equipment. Every classroom has its AV projector. Students are so used to working with presentations. So I don't think there's a single lecture that goes without that presentation being on. So even a day, if it's not working, everyone's like up in arms, like, oh, what's happening, you know? So yeah, it's amazing to see how there's this bridge, you know, between that human touch in a classroom, but we are also including technology and making it work to our benefit. So it's been fantastic, and thanks to the solutions and management and our team at DBCHS, it's all happening. Yeah.
Thank you. Sirish, I'm going to let you, I'm going to take the pleasure to skip you, skipping answering this, because I have a little more direct question to you on a related topic, okay? You are a part of the, you've been a part of the curriculum devising faculty board. You continue doing that. You've done some fantastic job. And I want to ask you, is there an opportunity for private colleges to start thinking about having vegetarian only practicals in their curriculum? Sorry,
I think
I'll just finish.
Sure.
Sorry. The reason I'm saying this is that, you know, I'm sure you know this, that some of the IHMs, which are under the National Council, have already last year started this only vegetarian cookery practicals, because there's a huge demand for students who want to learn hotel management / kitchen operations, but they refrain due to family pressures because they don't want to touch non-veg or cook non-veg. I know for a fact, and I'm sure you know as well, that the IHMs have started that. There's a choice. It's a choice at the student when they get admission to tick whether they want to do a only vegetarian practical, but it's restricted to the national council level. What about private colleges? What about the ones who are not with the national council? Do you think there's a huge opportunity for you guys to pick on this and take it forward? And if yes, how difficult and practical is it for you guys to do this?
Yes, a very good question, I must say. When we started off in 2007, at the APG Institute, I'm there from the pre-opening time when we never had a name also. So the first batch, we had 20 students, and one of the student, when she came for admission, I'll not take her name. She said, we'll only take admission. And we were kind of, there was too much of pressure to get more students on board, being the first batch. The numbers are very important, for the revenues and other things, especially. Then yes, said, why not? We'll do a vegetarian, customized menu for you. And we did it pretty successfully. And the parent, in fact, when she was graduating in 2010, acknowledged that, in our annual day, the graduation day, we call it, in a forum like this where our chairperson was also there. And I think in the last 13 years, we have seen, but not many of them, we've been getting this request. And now that we have done it so successfully, we're happy to do it. In fact, all our chefs are quite tuned to. Now, there also probably you have some variations, like a student may not eat non-veg, but then he's okay to cut chicken, handle non-veg. But there are ones who are not, they don't even want to touch or look at it, So then we have a vegetarian equivalent option. So we've actually worked out that, and it really works in their favor. So they miss out on admissions, so people get on board. And there are no complaints, absolutely. And they're very happy with their peers, what their peers are doing, handling non-veg. They're happy doing a similar kind of a thing. The skills are the same, probably, but they're handling vegetarian. So it's, yeah. So that's our college experience, yeah.
Thanks. I didn't know that. I think you and Govan sir should start advertising this. Today I saw you guys are open for admissions. You should use this as a, instead of free now, you can say vegetarian practicals at AIH.
In fact, there's some colleges already doing it. I'm not sure which college, but then I've come across something like this.
Yeah, so I know
vegetarian menus.
A few IHMs, this is fairly new from 2019. There was a struggle happening since the last 3-4 years to have this done, but it's only since 2019 that IHMs are doing this. What about Sophia's and Don Bosco? And are you guys doing something like this, or is there an option of it? And if not, then maybe you can go back to your management and say another revenue earning board to get vegetarian cooking classes done. Elenka, you're smiling?
Yeah, I sure am, because I think all the faculty of DBCHS, especially the food production and my HOD, are also smiling along with me, even though I can't see them right now. Because I honestly don't think that's happening. I mean, let's be, very upfront about it. In our college, or rather in the field of hospitality, it's all about the experience. Okay, exploring oneself and giving yourself the chance to experiment and to experience the beauty of fine dining, the beauty of gourmet food. So, I mean, we've had students come in the past for admissions and said, I will not touch alcohol, I will not work with cocktails, and I will not touch meat and pork and beef products. And at some level, I think they will definitely going to lose out on the entire experience of what it is to be a hospitality professional. With all due respect to cultures and religion and belief, I mean, absolutely all due respect to that. But at the end of the day, you cannot, as an educator, you cannot, I personally feel you cannot be justified in giving the student an entire experience of what it is to be in the hospitality industry if you are not going to have a feel and an experience of everything that the industry offers you. It's as simple as that. It's like me saying, oh, I love to watch movies, but you know what? When I want to go and watch a Bollywood flick, I don't want to watch songs. I don't want to watch them running around the trees. That's not happening. I have to sit through the songs as well, right? Because that's the experience of watching a Bollywood flick. So it's similar with this industry. You have to experience it all. So yes, I know revenue generation is important, filling up seats is important. We get all that. But by the grace of God, it's not been the crux of why we are running DBCHS. It's not been pivotal in, moving on with students and running this college. So there's a lot more than just money. Yes, of course, that's important, no doubt. But it's not going to be a reason why we are going to open up only vegetarian, or then you will have something with no onion and no garlic meals. Okay, maybe that could be a specialty cuisine on one particular day for one particular menu, or maybe as an experiment or an event. But it's not going to be like a full-fledged course as such. I personally don't feel that would happen because it's just not fair to the students. Yeah.
Thank you. I wouldn't have expected anything lesser than as straightforward as you could have got, Elenka.
Yeah.
Aspi, your thoughts on this?
Mr. Satyan, yes, let's look at this from two viewpoints. Number one, admissions. Yes, we would be able to fill up our seats. But sir, since I'm a placement officer, obviously I would get sleepless nights, because when these students would go in front of a panel and basically put across the restrictions, that is something which I don't think any hotel panel would appreciate, because when hotels come to select students, basically they obviously want a total finished product. They want somebody who's going to, work in the kitchens and take instructions. And they want somebody who's going to first do the unlearning and then follow instructions, because to a large extent, when a student enters the industry, the first thing he has to do is unlearn. It's not a cut, copy, paste scenario. And in this particular question that you asked, they will not be able to adapt to the kitchen environment. Obviously, if they come in with restrictions, and we may take them to fill up the seats, but when we have to basically arrange for the campus recruitment, it will be very difficult for them to get placements, because obviously they will be very frank with the placement officers and they will lose out on placements. So in a practical real life scenario, this immediately I don't see it taking off. Maybe in the long run, possibly.
Thank you. So I'm going to start addressing you as Mr. Daruwala now, since you're embarrassing me by going on calling me Mr. Satyan. I will keep calling you Mr. Daruwala. Okay, but thank you both, Elenka and Aspi, for doing that. Thank you for saying what you did. And Sirish, thank you for sharing what AIH and your team is doing. My only point here is that it was not only from a revenue generation perspective. And this leads to my next point, is curriculum. Everything is employability. Everything is towards we are teaching students to get jobs. What about becoming entrepreneurs? The reason this whole thing started was of the fact that, can we not have students who can become entrepreneurs? Can't they not take jobs in vegetarian restaurants? I'm not forcing you, it's just a conversation we're having. And I understand the restrictions that you have. And that's why I was very pleasantly surprised when Sirish said that, they're balancing the veg versus the non-veg part. And I completely get it. And I'm not advocating for that. But there's a huge market for this, definitely somewhere out there. I don't have data to share how many students in the IHMs have gone into this. But I'll move to the next point, which is curriculum. Is it relevant today? I know you're going to be sensitive about this, each of you in your fields, and there's nothing wrong with the curriculum. When I say relevant is between the industry expectations and the college giving out or churning out students with the parameters within the Bombay University or whatever the governing council board who's done the syllabi. Do we feel that there is an opportunity to excel? And if yes, and I know all of you are nodding, which is yes, Sirish, let's start with you. What's holding us back?
I think the last time I think we had reworked on the curriculum was in 2011. I remember that year where all college professors used to meet, in one institute, who took charge of that subject. And we had this meetings, and then every college was doing their bit to impress the faculty members and the principals who joined in. And so some work happened, and I think the syllabus changed eventually. But now it's 9 years now. In 9 years, a lot of things have changed. And now with the pandemic coming in, post-pandemic, the dynamics have changed. The requirements of the industry has changed. So there definitely there is a huge scope, room for making changes in the curriculum. So I feel the board has to probably look at this very seriously, and kind of. But this can be actually done, very easily with platforms like where we don't have to travel. We just need to probably divide our work, organize ourselves well, and do it faster. And then probably.
Can I come in, Sirish? I understand that all of you are governed by the board, and like all governing bodies, sometimes they take their own sweet time. But can colleges not do it proactively?
No. What happens is once the colleges do their bit, then I think Dopti ma'am, I don't know whether she's here. We have a dynamic chairperson for our board. So she actually takes it up, with the university at whatever level and gets it done. Like we had introduced research project in place of industrial training, because students cannot go for training. It happened very fast. Now the curriculum got developed, the entire what is going to happen, how it is going to happen, then even training people on how to handle research, how to guide the students, so everything was done, in a month's time. And I think students are already, those colleges have already started, taking care of the students, doing research. So that's already happening. So
I get that, but where I'm coming from, and I'd really like to understand from the other panelists also, is in today's day and age, and I'll talk about, just give me a second, please. So in today's day and age, there is no relevance of a French classical menu and the 13 course, 17 course, 21 course, the key card system in front office. There is lots and lots that I could give examples of, but they're part and parcel of our syllabi. Can that not be changed? Do we need to really do that? Because the world's moving very, very fast. Aspi, some thoughts on that? And then Elenka, quickly to you also.
Yes, Mr. Satyan. Yes, this definitely has relevance with what you are saying. Now, as teachers at our level, we can incorporate as add-ons in sync with the industry, and we can fine-tune the portion. And I have been sharing the subject with Mr. Sirish, and I can very proudly say that he has done a fantastic job. And what is inculcated in the front office syllabus, the accommodations management syllabus, is to a large extent pertaining to the industry. We also have got a property management system, a demo version. I think as so far as an APJ, we have practicals in the computer lab, and we teach these students on this demo version how to take reservations, receptions, guest database, and so on and so forth. But the underlying fact is, no matter how much we fine tune the portion, we give the students guidelines. And coming back to my point, the student has to evolve when he goes to the industry, and he has to unlearn and then learn again, because in the industry, he will be taught about the right and the not so right. And in the not so right, these are the gray areas, and he will be taught, his experience will teach him. I'm not saying wrong, I'm saying right and not so right. So he will have to basically migrate to their standard operating procedure and their level of thinking. And if he can use the guidelines that have been imbibed in him, he will do a fantastic job, because there is no cut, copy, paste scenario. No matter how well we teach them, no matter whether it's totally in synchronization with what is happening in the industry, hotels work differently. Each hotel has its own unique and different way of functioning. So the student himself will learn, and himself will imbibe the culture of the hotel, go through the mission and vision statement, learn the standard operating procedures, and he will adapt as per the management policy. He will adapt and fine tune and synchronize to the working of that particular department. And this is how basically he will treat the gray areas. There are gray areas and you have to tread very softly. It's like not to tip the boat. So this is basically how, I mean, we get feedbacks from our students, and yes, what we teach them gives them the basic guidelines. And as I'm telling you, we receive a set of bricks, a 12th standard student, and it's up to us how basically we have to mold these bricks. We make it into a fine mansion, and then we market it to the industry, and the industry sometimes may make internal changes in the mansion to suit their requirements. So this basically is the scenario today. And yes, it is relevant. What we are teaching them is relevant, and it tremendously helps them in what they do.
Sure. Alenka?
Yeah, I think they have both Mr. Shirish and Mr. SP has put it beautifully, and I have to agree with what both of them said in terms of maintaining a balance. Basically, yes, one side we have to operate within the guidelines of the syllabus, and to some extent that is very important because we need that kind of structure for students. Also, at the end of the day, we have to remember that as much as we want them to even have that connect with the real world, the students also want that paper, even though it's just a degree on paper, it's a very valid degree and it is still asked for in all industries. But in terms of relevance and the real world scenario, yes, colleges in their own individual levels are able to form that connect. So we take the syllabus as a substrate and then we work on that, and we kind of include our own scenarios subject wise, and we ensure that the end product, that is our student in the third year, is absolutely ready for that interview and is able to kind of draw parallels with what he has learned as a foundation, because that is important. And of course, how is he going to apply it in the real world? Like, to just give you a very quick example, one of the subjects I take is com skills, communication skills, corporate English, and so on. Like you spoke about the French classical menu and its relevance, right? Totally agree. I mean, is he really going to use it at the end of the day? Probably not. But we have to remember that is basic, and we have to have that foundation which is strong. If I want my student to be very articulate, I want my student to be an effective communicator, I cannot expect my student to immediately, speak some very fancy vocabulary and be so articulate and give a speech. He needs to know the basics of English to begin with that. So even if it is the verbs and the adjectives, he needs to know that. So that is relevant to some extent, but then we as teachers in our departments and in our colleges need to build on it and ensure there is some kind of parallel. So yeah, it's absolutely what they both said.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you all. I'm going to quickly take some questions which are popping in. Aspi, Sam Amal Sadwala says hello to Aspi.
Hello, Sam. Hello, Sam. Chef Puneet. Hello, thank you for joining us.
Puneet says, wishing Aspi sir a very happy Teachers' Day. Thank you for being a big source of inspiration to many students who have been lucky enough to be coached by you. That includes me. My respect to a great teacher and a humble human being.
Thank you, and likewise.
Kinas says, well said, Aspi, for the college support. Okay, so Kayosh Kerawala, hi Kayosh, thank you buddy for coming in, and I'm going to take your question this time without telling you that it's been answered. I'll have them answer this. So where does, Kayosh is saying, where does vegetarian cooking start/stop? Regarding production, is the kitchen utensil equipment going to be separate? So here's a question for that. Yes, Kayosh, you are absolutely right. And I think, anyone has any thoughts to tell him about that? Since anyway, Alenka and Aspi are very clear that they are not doing vegetarian students. Okay, great. So Kayosh, well put, thank you. So Dharmesh, hi, thank you for coming in, Dharmesh. He says vegan chefs are paid twice the current salary. There is a huge demand. The current scenario is different. Markets want vegan chefs. They're willing to pay top price. Escoffier is dead and gone. Anthony Bourdain is still alive. Marco Pierre White are kings. Okay, Dharmesh. Kids need to be aware of new restaurants and menus. Yes. Kayosh says, tell the general manager and chef working in the industry to set the syllabus. All right, great. So a lot of support from you guys. So my point was not about saying that the syllabus is not up to date. It's just about, is it relevant? Because, and that point comes from the fact that a lot of times when we speak in industry for us, there is a push and a pull. The industry people say, and I'm sure the educators have heard this a million times, we're not getting good quality. But when good quality comes out, they're not getting jobs or relevant jobs. I'll give you an example. You train them for 3 years, you make them study, you send them for internships. The hotel spends time in training or interning that person, right? And exactly as Aspi said right now, once he's appointed or he or she's appointed, they'll go through a 2 year of training program again. What a waste of time, money, and energies just to imbibe that hotel or that unit's mission and vision. Okay, I'll move on. Prasanna Swami says, how is training and internship going to be affected during this pandemic time? How will colleges manage them? Okay, good question, Prasanna. Anyone wants to take that amongst the panel? How is training and internship going to be affected? It's already affected during this pandemic time, and how will colleges manage them? Thoughts, panelists, anybody?
I can take that.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Training, unfortunately, is not happening right now, because the batch which was to start the training in June and was to end in October is not happening because of obvious reasons. The hotels are shut. Even though they are operating, they don't have the business. So what does and plus the parents also, I'm not sure parents are really going to be comfortable sending their kids to places where probably they may probably pick up the virus. And also transport is another challenge, because I'm talking about Mumbai. Public transport is there very limited. So all these are challenges which come in the way of training. So we've got a research project in place of that, and students never had the opportunity to do research. So that's happening right now, as I just mentioned in the last conversation. And also another thing is training. What we are planning to do is, because training is very important, they need to get that industrial exposure. Otherwise, it's not complete. So probably we would defer it, to the semesters which probably would come in, maybe in the third year, or probably use their summer vacations, to probably put in some training exposure, and then that's it. They get that what they wanted. Though it may not be for 20 weeks, but at least for 4 weeks, 5 weeks, whatever is possible. So we need to strike that balance between curriculum and training. Training is important. We all know training is important. We have all gone through that, and we know how important it is in our shaping up. So yes, Prasanna, this is how it is going to be. Thank you.
Thanks, Sirish. So Aniket Upadhyay and Bini both are saying, hi, Aspi sir, happy Teachers Day, sir. Thanks a lot, sir, for guidance and many more. Bini says, bravo to all the wonderful teachers. Happy Teachers Day. And we salute you for imparting knowledge. Okay, great. I'm moving to the next part. And before that, quickly to share that Dharmesh also wishes happy Teachers Day to all three of you. And he has a very strong opinion on, and in saying that you all have the power to bring about the change that we need. Mumbai schools can be leaders by producing leaders. And many more other thoughts. I'll leave them for you guys to read for lack of time. So panelists, you can read them if you want to. It's in the Q&A under Dharmesh Karmokar. There are a couple of other points. I'm going to quickly move to the rest of the part. Genuinely, you guys, I've spoken to many of you, feel that there is no gap between academia and the industry, but the industry feels that there is a gap. So when I say industry, I'm talking about the hospitality industry and the powers that be. Is there a way that your colleges and you guys interact with the industry to understand why do they feel that there is a gap? Some thoughts on that? Do you regularly meet people from the hospitality industry to understand why they have this perception that there is a gap? Helenka, start with you.
Yes, yeah, sure. We have a lot of the hoteliers of all the various hotels in the city. They are the HR personnel and even GMs and F&B managers and so on, training and placement managers from these 5-star hotels who are regularly coming to our college. They are guests at our college. They interact with our students. We repeatedly have, seminars at that time, of course. So wherein they would have a one-on-one session with the students, have an open forum, wherein these hoteliers actually come and explain to our students, not just the third years, but even from the first year itself, they kind of give them the scenario what it is to actually be working in the hotel. So from you have a 5-star hotels, and we have personnel professionals coming in from there, as well as from these fine dine standalone restaurants. A lot of the entrepreneurs from these restaurants have also come in, and they form the connect from the first year itself. So our team at DBCHS makes sure that we have this liaison continuously with the hoteliers, so that our students are not suddenly thrown into, you know, the industry after 3 years. There is a constant kind of a bridge that is being built from the first year. And then yes, our students also often go for various events to these various hotels, and they interact with these individuals on a regular basis. So it is not uncharted territory for them, you know. So as much as I agree that a lot of the hoteliers say that yes, syllabus needs to be upgraded, we need to fine tune syllabus in terms of its relevance to today's working scenario, but the hoteliers are also able to reach to the students at their level and get them on board. So it's not that they are waiting for them to be employed and then they are going to be training them. It's not always like that. With our students, they have it from the first year itself, and it's working beautifully. So they are able to kind of meet that gap. Yeah.
Aspi, something from your side on this? Anything different?
Yes, Mr. Satyan. Sorry, I am by nature of habit, I'm addressing you as Mr. Satyan. Yes, I have something to say about this. Very rightly said, yes, we are trying to work at bridging this gap. Now, this particular gap that you're talking about, you see, it basically refers to a combination of soft skills and hard skills. See, hard skills is something which we can, you know, like, which is like the knowledge that we are imparting to them in the 3 years, but we are addressing the issue of soft skills also, where we are imparting to them the soft skill component also. And we are getting there. We are trying to bridge the gap. Also, sir, the gap basically would probably refer to a certain attitude that the recruitment panel is looking for, because what they don't know, they can always learn at the hotel. And yes, from day one, we uh, continuously instill and incorporate in our students, have the correct attitude, show the willingness to learn. And we are getting there, sir. It's going to take time, but we are getting there, and we have been successful to a certain extent. We have external specialists coming in to our institute and giving very detailed sessions on development of soft skills. Like, for example, we have an external panelist coming in for group discussions, and in liaison with me, the students are taught how to sit, their poise, their profile, diction control, body language. And this is something which will tremendously help them. So yes, we are inculcating a combination of hard skills and soft skills. And both this is very important, and they are definitely looking for a positive attitude as well as an aptitude. So yes, the issue is being addressed as we speak.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you for your responses. My take on this for all three of you and the listeners is that I really feel that high time that the hospitality education institutes, while they stick to doing what they are doing, which is great, need to move to a competency-based learning model. What that means is that if I'm not competent enough to become a chef, I recognize my strengths and help me develop those in that line. Today, the industry, let's not assume that everyone joining hospitality management is going to join hotels. There's a whole industry outside hotels. There's an entire services industry. Group discussions are great, but leadership skills, emotional intelligence, balancing teamwork, critical crisis management. I know that these are not management terms that I'm using. I just feel that when we say hospitality management and catering technology or whatever we use, these could be some of the things that you guys might want to think of. Take it as an extra point, as competency-based learning. Trust me, there's a huge demand for this, and it'll make a lot of sense. With that having said, I'm going to ask you, each of you, to tell me, how do you guys feel when today, in today's age of internet and mobile, your student has access of information on your topic faster than you have? So for example, you're teaching somebody, or you're going to say, okay, I'm teaching this topic today. You'll have a smart aleck like me who can actually Google some stuff, not necessarily the right stuff, and sit in your class as a smart aleck. Not today online, but even offline. I'm sure we all do that, and a lot of students will be doing that. How do How do you handle that? Is the pressure too much for you to know, to ask yourselves, is my course content relevant? And how do you handle such people? Sirish, let's start with you and then we'll move to everybody else.
All right. Very interesting question. Now, actually, what happens is, of course, with I've been in teaching when there was no internet. I've actually started off about 22 years ago. So internet, though it was there, but probably not accessible to everyone. And so we never had that fear factor that they're going to check our knowledge or probably start judging us, based on how much we know, how much we don't know, and those kind of things. But we were always prepared as teachers, to make sure that we give the right, deliver the right content, which is correct content. And I was probably pretty young, about 22 years ago. So the gap between the student and me was just 3 or 4 years. Now, over the years, the gap is actually widened. Now, in fact, all the students are my son's age, probably even younger than that. And the internet is faster now, and internet is available in the institute. They all have smartphones, access devices. But then I've actually seen that it doesn't really give you that insecurity, provided you keep updating yourself, which I think most of us as faculty do that, and also learn. You need to also. It's not that you need to just listen to me and that's it. That is how it is supposed to be. No, it has to be a kind of a cordial kind of a learning environment where we also learn from students. They also contribute to a discussion. So we probably become facilitators. And the entire result is beautiful. And everybody learns in the entire class. And there's so many more examples. Like if I have to do situation handling, I would probably only have 10 or 12 examples, something which I have as a document. But if I actually open this up to the students, they will start contributing, each one of them contributing 5. So that's a huge pool of, various situations. I've tried that, and it really works very well. So it's give and take basically. So the insecurity should not come in, provided it should not happen. And even if you don't know the answer and if you're wrong, please admit. I mean, it's okay. I mean, students will not kind of say that isko kuch nahi aata hai, and then kind of not respect you or not attend your classes or whatever maybe, or pass a comment somewhere. It doesn't happen. At least my experience. I don't know how it happens otherwise. So that's how, and it's still going on. I'm very happy in this space, and I continue to do this using this format.
Thank you, Sirish. Very, very mature answer to the mature person that you are. And absolutely not, the intent was not about insecurity, but it was just about, do you have eyes on you every time? Do you feel that, students you have to answer them or be ready within every answer? Mr. Daruwala, your thoughts on this, and then I'll move to Elenka for that after that.
Yes, sir. In today's day and age, sir, information is power, obviously. So how I would handle the situation? Yes, I would prepare myself very well. I would not take my student for granted, because gone were the days when you say black is white and white is black. So obviously, yes, you can have a student sometimes who may ask you a question. And instead of just saying something off the top of your head, you can always tell the student, look, I will get back to you as far as this issue is concerned. And you definitely earn that student's respect when, and you earn the respect of the whole class when, in your next class, you basically give that student credit for having that courage of conviction, for opening his mouth and asking that question and sharing that knowledge with the entire class. Yes, as a communicator, as a facilitator, as a teacher, obviously, I myself have to earn his respect first before he can earn my respect. And sir, after all, it is the courage of conviction that you have, and totally based on 100% correct information that you are imparting to the student, where you are safe, and you don't leave any area open where the student may realize a small chink that you have and try to widen it. Because sometimes students being students, they sometimes feel nice when, okay, I asked a question and he was hesitating, he was faltering. Very frankly, in this day and age, with the information superhighway, you are not expected to know everything. And it's like, the more you know, the more realize how little you know. So yes, we handle the situation in this way, where we tell the student, frankly, we will get back to you. And you get back to the student with the correct information, and not just the question that he's asked, but definitely certain other areas which are pertaining to the question. And yes, you will definitely earn the respect of that particular student and your class.
Thanks. Alenka, you are a graded, so you're
you are both the gentlemen are taking the words from my mouth, so it leaves. I need to Google some answers now so that I can answer this. No, but on a more serious note, to be honest with you, I just believe in one thing when I enter my class: honesty. I'm an open book when I'm in class in terms of me being a teacher, me being an educator, and my subject as well. There is no I'm better than you, or you're better than me kind of a feeling. That superiority inferiority does not exist, not between my students. I make sure it doesn't, and definitely not between me and my students as well. And I think that's the only way you can have a connect with an entire class, be it a class of 30, 60, or even 120. I love a student who challenges me. I absolutely thrive on it. And it's amazing that there are a few, very rarely of course, but there are a few who will know more than you about your subject. And like Mr. Asfi and Mr. Sirish both said, there's nothing wrong in that. In fact, it's a feather in my cap, because it shows that they are actually so interested in my subject that they are going and doing their own reading without me even enforcing it. So I take it very positively, and it's truly it's beautiful to see that kind of evolution in the students. In fact, one of the techniques that I do adopt sometimes in my classroom teaching is a technique called as a flipped classroom, and it's beautiful to see that happen in action. Of course, I can't really do it much online, but in reality, when we are there together in college, I flip the classroom. So I have my students who become the teacher, and I become the student. And it's beautiful to see the dynamics work, because you have these very mischievous and high on energy students who suddenly take on leadership roles and are suddenly getting so serious about what they're talking, and they're trying to maintain a class, and then they come and tell me, oh wow ma'am, how do you actually manage to do this? No one's listening. I'm like, yeah, good for you, now you know. So it actually works beautifully. So it's great to have students like that, and it kind of gets it kind of keeps the momentum of a classroom, so it doesn't get redundant, it doesn't get monotonous and boring. Otherwise, I'm the only one talking and everyone's listening, and it doesn't always work like that. So it's great to have students like that. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, and moving on to the last part, probably the last question from my side, or last point to talk to you guys about. And I really would love your honesty in this. Okay. You have students who pass out, who you've taught, and in today's age and times, in probably 3 or 4 years, they come back to your colleges as hiring managers or as head of departments. Yeah, because the churn and the turnover is very, very high. And suddenly, some of them can get very cocky, and suddenly a lot of them can start addressing you by your first names. How do you manage that? Does it affect you? That 3 years back or 2 years back, I was Miss Alenka, Ma'am Alenka, Sirish sir, Aspish sir, and today he's backslapping me or she's backslapping me, trying to teach me my own job, trying to tell me how we should improve our students. How do you handle that? I know it's happening. You also know it's happening. How do you handle that, honestly? Alenka, let's start with you.
See, I have different avatars. So when I'm in my classroom, when I'm in college, when I'm a teacher, and I can vouch for it, and I think my students and ex-students will all vouch for it. No one messes with that. I mean, they don't want to mess with it unless they are on a suicide mission. So that's one thing. But when they do come back, and a lot of them do, firstly, nobody till today has actually addressed me by my first name. I mean, truth be told, I have a colleague right now who's working with me, who's a very close colleague, a friend, and she was an ex-student, and now she's working with me. She's definitely listening in onto this and probably laughing there, because I have personally told her so many times, okay, we are working for more than 5 years. It's okay if you call me Alenka. I do not have a problem with that. No, it just doesn't happen. It's not happening, and I don't think it's ever going to happen. It's like, I cannot. It's not coming out. I cannot call you by name. It's always ma'am. So I guess that's just ingrained in students, right? Of course, there are some who may do that, but it's not in the college scenario. It's probably if I do meet ex-students out, we do go out and so on. It's a whole different dynamic over there. Yes, that's personal, that's a social life, and it's very different. But if you're talking about coming to college as hiring placement officers and so on, and they're taking interviews, oh no way, it just doesn't happen. So and even if it would, if they do tell me about my classes and how I could rectify or improve something, I would absolutely take it as constructive feedback and work on it, because probably they know more than me right now, because they are in the industry and I'm still in academics. But otherwise, no, there's never been a backslapping issue at all in college. Yeah.
Thanks. Sirish,
Yeah.
your thoughts on this?
In fact, being in teaching for about 22 years now, I think maybe 1 or 2 out of 10,000 odd students probably will. I don't remember anybody calling me by my first name directly, because I don't know what I do, how I do it. But even though, I can see the students who are very senior right now, handling huge portfolios, huge profit centers. I meet them also. I mean, they still have that, they still talk about the good old days, and this is what you did for us. This is how you changed us, completely. And they regard that so well that whatever we are, it's because of, those things which we did, in when we were in college. So we're blessed actually to still been called as Shirish sir, as a proper still, I mean, I hope it continues, till towards the end of my career, it continues. And even after that also. But even if somebody calls also, I mean, it's okay. I mean, I don't take it, probably don't see it very differently, see him differently, or it's fine. I mean, I can't control that. I can't tell him, better call me sir. I mean, it's all up to him, how he wants to call me.
And have you encountered anyone coming and telling you that the industry's moved fast ahead, moved ahead? You guys are still.
No, the other way around. Actually, I move very fast. I'm actually, because we are blessed to have hotels. We are a learning and development center, so I'm in touch with the industry. On a constant, regular basis. We doing trainings. So that keeps us absolutely updated. What's actually happening, because we have constant dialogues with the industry. Practicing managers across all our units, and it really helps us to get that knowledge, and use that knowledge, so it brings in a lot of credibility to our entire teaching process. So at least I never face that, that kind of a gap.
Thank you. Aspi sir, your response to this, please.
Yeah, Mr. Satyan, I really wouldn't think anything about it, because frankly, I think during the time he's a student, it is basically protocol that he addresses us as sir. And ultimately, the bottom line is that if he has earned my respect, I put it this way, he will call me sir for lifetime. But yes, to a certain extent, sir, I will respect his individuality, because maybe when he comes back as a training manager or a campus recruitment manager, maybe he thinks that he has leveled the playing field. And of course, backslapping hasn't yet happened, sir, in my 26 years of teaching. But yes, I don't recollect anybody calling me by my first name, but even if he does call me by my first name, sir, I will respect his individuality and his way of thinking. I mean, I don't need to wait for him to come back as a training manager. I mean, even if he's an ex-student, he can come back and address me by name. I mean, after all, what's the big deal? Okay, I have my own identity, and so does he. So, I mean, we are both individuals.
Thank you. So Dharmesh has put in a comment saying that we gifted our guru, our teacher, our dear teacher, a cruise for 2 to Maldives with a stay in Maldives too. We all owe our knowledge to our teachers. So Dharmesh is a gold medalist from IHM Mumbai, Dadar Catering, a sweet friend of mine, and a naughty one at that. And Chef Satish Arora, Chef, namaskar. Happy Teachers Day once again to you, sir. And thank you for writing in and for being here. So Chef Satish Arora is saying, I know for a fact that all 3 colleges are doing a good job. I particularly agree with lots of points put forward by Mr. Aspi. I also feel the syllabus in institutes must be looked into, as there is a revolution in the hospitality industry. It is not only hotels, but today trained students are required for air catering, cloud kitchens, hospitals, and many more activities at present. Industry and college boards should jointly look into this. Absolutely agree, Chef. but it's going to be a two-way street. We are doing our best in our own little ways. One of the challenges that also happens is restrictions, and sometimes, if I may speak on behalf of the educators, the industry leaders speak, but when the time comes, they don't come on board to do their action. I've experienced that many times. I'm still experiencing it also in a very different format, but wishful thinking. But we are education and hospitality is in safe hands, I must say, with these three wonderful educators, their brethren, and everyone else. Thank you so much. Quick closing comments. I'd love to hear your last comments from all of you. Sirish sir.
I think it was entire 1.5 hour conversation and just went off as if it was just about 30 minutes, you know. I mean, wonderful questions which were thrown at us, and I think we could handle them, hopefully, to the satisfaction of the audience. And I was just looking at the numbers, you know, and the numbers really didn't drop down well. That means that really speaks about the interest level of the entire webinar. So I'm sure people have got a lot of value by attending this. Thank you so much for attending, and thank you for making me a part of this webinar. Over to you, Satyan sir.
Alenka ma'am and Asmi sir.
Thank you to you first, Satyan, for including me in this. It's been a beautiful experience. Conversations could never be better and candid than this. So I totally love candid conversations. And also with you, Mr. Shirish and Mr. Aspi, it's truly been a privilege to share this platform with you. Very experienced in your field. So thank you very much for, being part of this along with me. And also a big thank you to our audience, our participants, and everyone who has wished us. It's truly heartwarming and motivating to be part of this field, this academic field. In fact, I've always said it's never my profession, but it's my vocation. I probably was born to be a teacher and probably going to definitely die being a teacher. So thank you very much for, conversations today. I truly enjoyed it. Thank you.
Mr. Daruwala?
I would like to convey my thanks to you and to my panelists to basically be here with me and discuss. And also, I would like to thank my audience for being there. And basically, my message to them once again is just make use of this very valuable resource which you have, which is time. Okay, this is the time where you can effectively use this time to widen the horizon of your thinking. You have access to the internet. This is something which we did not have when we were students. You have the information superhighway at your fingertips. You also have the time. So please make use of it. And we will meet very shortly, all my students. We will meet very shortly in a physical classroom environment. And we will appreciate all those things which we have been taking for granted. We will appreciate them much more. So once again, thank you, my panelists, and thank you, Mr. Satyan, for having me here on this platform. Thank you, Mr. Chef Satish Arora. Thank you, Puneet. Thank you, all the others who I have taught, as well as guest participants. Thank you for being here, and thank you for your time.
I'm going to end by saying thank you to each one of you. A big thank you to teachers all across the world. And my friend Dharmesh has sent a very lovely long message. I'm going to read just one last line. He explains who is a guru. Guru is the one who awakens wisdom in you, leading you from darkness to light. And thank you so much to all of you gurus. Have a wonderful life ahead. Keep educating and be safe and keep teaching. Thank you so much. Aspi, Alenka, and Sirish, it was lovely having you. And thank you, audiences. Have a wonderful evening. God bless.